can a nation that claims 85% of its inhabitants are Christian also be the sixth most atheistic nation in the world today? That sounds like a contradiction in terms.
A lot of it can be traced back to a law that was in the books that basically dictated that a child, when it was born, was on paper Christian by default. So if their parents were registered to the state church, they would automatically be registered at birth to the state church. And so that number, 85%, is quite high. And it's definitely not because people registered for the state church. It's because they were born into it and sort of looked at as Christian by default. And so a lot of nominal sort of Christianity over here.
Well, as a former minister said to you that Iceland is a preacher's graveyard. Those are strong words. Why is it so difficult to spread the gospel there?
It's we think we got it all. It's a beautiful graveyard. It's definitely a beautiful place and a good place to live. But it is just the apathy. Sort of when missions teams have come over here and I've asked for feedback, it's not really hostility or threatenings or anything like that towards the gospel, but rather just apathy. Sort of maybe the relativistic kind of thinking where that works for you and that's great, but I don't need Jesus. And they've rejected Jesus without knowing who he really was and who the scriptures say he was.
So in this culture, what is the best way to win people to Christ? I know that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm supposed to be an expert on the issue, we're in a sad state because we're going through trial and error right now. So we got a really artistic culture, and we're trying to use the arts for the glory of God and to share the gospel. But we are realizing more and more that the traditional way of evangelizing, going downtown, handing out flyers, we've been doing that for almost 2.5 years. When we realized that we had probably spent a lot of money bringing these groups over here short term, and we look back, and I don't think we had a single person come to church or a service because of that effort.
Well, how has your church grown over the past few years using kind of these new techniques and kind of understanding what isn't working and what is working?
We kind of revamped our strategy for evangelizing, mainly focusing on the locals over here to equip them for the work of the ministry, to share the gospel in their daily lives. And it seems everyone in our church that we have right now is because the people have been faithful in their daily lives, telling their friends about the gospel and having open conversations about the doubts. We have a small group that we sort of tell people it's kind of doubt night. You're welcome to come over here and ask questions about the faith. We still have atheists who come regularly to small groups and Sunday services, and they're still not switching teams. I ask them almost every Sunday, are you ready to switch teams now? Are you ready to confess Christ as Lord? And that's just something that God is doing, and we can't really fully explain it. We're definitely not a mega church. So I don't want to project the idea that we're like, a few thousand people over here. We're like, 50 on a Sunday. So it's not a mega church over here, but God is doing a work, and in a country where a lot of churches are not at this number that we are at, it's definitely something that we marvel at, and we hope and pray that God will continue to do his work. And so we're seeing some people come to faith, but we're plowing away, and we're hoping, that our children and our grandchildren will be able to reap some of the seeds that we've sown. And we're going to be faithful no matter what we see with our eyes. We're going to be faithfully plowing the ground, faithfully sharing the gospel and standing on the truths of God while delivering it with grace, as we see that Christ himself